a retired homicide detective. I've interviewed thousands of people, from serial killers to ministers. Welcome to the interview room.
Finally, I think I can see clearly now. I'm in love. You almost like I'm in love. You from
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the interview room. If this is your first time, we want to welcome you here tonight. This is a victim-focused channel. Tonight, we remember Ethan, Maddie, Kaylee, and Xana. That is the reason we are all here this evening. And as we go through this evening together, we make sure that if we could to each other, please remember each of these young 4 lives that was taken and that were taken. They lost their lives as beautiful college students in their prime. They will always be either 20 or 21. Their parents, their family members, their brothers, and their sisters will forever be locked into that age. It'll never go away. These 4 young college students deserve justice. They deserve to be remembered. They deserve their families to have peace. They deserve to have a venue of jurors in their community. They deserve love and appreciation from the system. They too have rights. And tonight we're going to talk about, as the survey said, and I've brought on tonight my sweetheart of many, many years, and you'll know that I married way up, my Karen. How are you, hon?
I'm great. Hey, everybody. It's great to be with you. That was a very powerful opening. I do want to give a shout out as we begin to one of my BFFs, Rachel, and her sweet daughter, Mia. Love you guys. That was very powerful, and we always wanted to make sure that the victims never get forgotten when we talk about this case. And we try our best to do that. And our prayers go out to their family members too at this time. They have been waiting a very long time for justice. They've been waiting a very long time for the trial to get started. And we're not there yet. And so we always want to remember them and their families and keep them in our hearts.
Yeah, and it looks like this may get a little more complicated for Bryan Kohberger's attorney, Ann Taylor, because she just picked up another case, another death penalty case, Skylar Meade, who shot it out with the cops. And Miss Taylor, as you can see right there in the photograph, is going to represent him as well. So she is going to be extremely busy. And I'm just wondering how in the world that's going to impact the families and the victims in the Kohberger case. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out ultimately, because now she has two extremely high profile cases in the state of Idaho. And we'll just see what's going to happen. So tonight, if you're new to our channel, we want to thank you for being here. Karen and I are appreciative of each and every one of you. We love not only our channel members, but our Patreon members and our subscribers. Without you, we cannot do this. And we are eternally grateful for each and every one of you. No question about it. And we ask one thing. The only thing we ask as you go through here this evening, if you have a question, feel free to throw it up. If at some point we'll get to that. Typically, it's at the end of our presentations. So don't lose patience with me. I haven't forgotten or if you highlighted something, I didn't miss it. We will come back to that. But we just ask one thing, and that is that you please share this video, hit that like and that thumb button. And if you've not hit the subscribe button, please hit the subscribe button. That is all we ever ask on this channel. So that said, I want to introduce you to probably the greatest young woman that ever came into my life many, many years ago. I married her in Hawaii, and they rode on the beach, just Maui'd. She is one of the most intelligent women I've ever met. And I'm not just being biased here. I mean, she is a force to be reckoned with. And she was an investigative journalist, started out at the LA Times, and then ultimately ended up in San Diego County working for a daily. And her editor is a great war hero. His name is John Streikemeyer. They call him Tilt. And he wrote many, many books, the SOG Chronicles. Those of you who are familiar with Special Forces, he is the real deal. He's been on all those podcasts with all the Navy SEALs and the Special Force guys, but he used to tell her, go over the wall and get the story. And, Karen took that to heart and at numerous occasions had gone over walls and had come out with the story. So tonight, she's going to give us a presentation. I'm just going to kind of follow along here about what she has learned in this latest motion and this change of venue. It's a 314-page motion for a change of venue, and she said she can sum it up in 3 words. So, Karen, what are the 3 words?
You guys ready? Blame the media. That would be the summation of 314 pages from Kohberger's defense attorney on this change of motion. So as we get into this, Chris and I were talking about this before, and I really thought that going through this, so I read this, and I got to tell you guys, I was waiting for Ann Taylor to pull out and to show me all the times and all the places that the media got it wrong, that the media wrote inaccurate information and, all this stuff. And I got to tell you, we got to the end of page 314 and we still never saw it. So I don't want to, do a spoiler alert here, but I thought it was really important to spend some time and go through this document, if at the very least, to give you guys hope for justice. And, as a journalist for so many years, my job was to present both sides. And that's ingrained in me. It's not one-sided, it's up the middle, it's both sides. And to let you, the viewer, and or the reader, decide, make that decision for yourself. But with this document, we thought it was really important to point out a number of things. We're not going to go through every single page, but so also this document is going to be the basis for an upcoming hearing in a few weeks. The hearing is scheduled for August 29th. We don't know if it's going to actually go as scheduled on the 29th, but regardless, it's supposed to come before Latah County Judge John Judge on August 29th. So instead of you guys going through the document, we thought we would do it for you and with you. And so a number of things stuck out to us.
You had some advice. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Apologize.
That's okay.
What was your advice to Ann?
Right. So my advice to the defense is, do not blame the people that buy their ink by the barrel, as the saying goes, because she blames the media throughout this document. And we can only hope that common sense will prevail and that the judge will see through this and will balance both sides and will come to the right and correct decision in this case, in terms of, do we move this venue or do we keep it exactly where it is? So,
okay,
with
where do
that,
you start?
So let's go to page 2. And while you're moving over to page 2, several things stuck out. So I think the most important thing to know about this document is that the defense is building their whole case for a change of venue around the telephone survey, the paid telephone survey that we all heard about that went on in the spring in Latah County. And so that is the basis, as you'll see, for this document. They claim that the jury pool is tainted and that Ann Taylor's client, that his due process is violated unless they can get a change of venue. I want you guys you decide, you make up your own decision in listening to this tonight. They also claim the media put out, quote, inaccurate information on the case. Yet, as I said at the beginning, we fail to see any examples of this. I'm not saying they're not out there. I'm just saying they're not included in this document. And
Yeah,
Tina,
she
okay,
throws.
I want to answer Tina's question right up front, just because. So the defense paid this social scientist. His name is Bryan Edelman, and we'll talk about him in the survey that he did. They paid, and he has over the years been hired by many other people. It's a whole genre. It's a whole, career path to do this. Hey, Gary. Gary's reading along the document. Okay, so they blame the media. They don't give any examples of where the media allegedly gave inaccurate information about her client. So let's jump in. Let's go to page 2. And so Ann Taylor, she writes that her client can't receive, and I'm following along here on my laptop too, that her client can't receive a fair trial due to, quote, extensive publicity that's been ongoing, inflammatory and inaccurate and highly prejudicial publicity, and inadmissible information. So that's all her claim on page 2.
That's the issues.
That's what she's claiming. Yep. Okay, moving to page 3. She says, quote, "The media focus on Mr. Kohberger has been relentless and highly inflammatory." So I would ask her, well, what's been inflammatory? Okay, this is a case about 4 beautiful college students that were killed while they were sleeping in their sleep. Obviously, this is going to be highly emotional. It's going to, this isn't a case where people, kind of sort of feel one way or the other. No, this is a very emotional case. It's a quadruple murder. Okay, so I'm not sure what she's calling inflammatory. Is she saying the public doesn't have a right to be outraged and horrified? So I'll leave that for you guys to decide.
Yeah, and
Let's
here's a
go
good
ahead,
point
Chris.
here
Yeah,
that LS says the media is only to get hotter for BK wherever he goes.
exactly. And what's interesting is she writes in this document somewhere that as the trial is delayed and as there's a longer time before the trial, she would expect the media coverage to wane, and the attention and spotlight on her client, she would expect it to wane. Heck no, that's not the way it works. So, okay, let's see what Band Van says. "I see her client claiming that he was stargazing that night is inflammatory." Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. Okay. So again, she's trying to make the case that her client can't get a fair trial in Lake County. So let's go to page 5 if you're good with that, Chris. And
Okay.
again, you guys, we're not going through every page, but there's a number of pages here that I think are pretty interesting and can kind of give you an idea of what's in here and what's going to be before the judge for him to decide. On page 5, she says that this case is, quote, "an extreme case where Latah County is utterly corrupted." Those are her words, utterly corrupted by press coverage. Okay. And further on, she cites all of the press releases that were done by the authorities in this case, and she summarizes a lot of the coverage. But you guys judge for yourself. Do you think the press coverage has been inflammatory, or do you think it's been more or less fair? That's for you guys to decide. So she says the continuous nature of media coverage, often inaccurate and misleading, the impact of the media coverage, and the small size of the community make the case against her client extreme. So, Chris, just this is a thought. As I'm reading this, just that whole idea of the spaghetti analogy of you throw it all up on the wall and you see what sticks. I really got that sense reading this document. How about you? What did you think?
Absolutely. It's every death penalty case is extreme and inflammatory. The fact that the person's behavior was so extreme, it inflamed the emotions of the community. And that's why the state chose to put death as a punishment onto the table. So it does not matter in, a community. Now, if there were not enough jurors, maybe she could have, some really solid ice to stand on. But unfortunately, there are a lot of jurors.
Yeah,
And
let me jump in. In her own report, and again, this is from her. This is not any independent assessment. So she claims it's roughly population of 41,000 people in Latah County, and she says of those 41,000, about 25,000 people could be eligible for jury duty. Obviously over age 18 and living there and to be able to serve. She also says that, and we'll touch on this later, but she also claims that two of the largest employers, which are law enforcement and the University of Idaho. The University of Idaho. I digress. We'll get there later. Those are the two largest employers. So University of Idaho employs about 4,300 people, and then law enforcement maybe accounts for 300 or 400 other people. Okay, so if her numbers are accurate, she's talking about 4,800 people who may have a built-in bias on this case, and you'd have to kick them out. They wouldn't be eligible. Even if you subtracted that from the 25,000, you still have, yeah, exactly, AJ. You'd have to move the trial overseas. Yeah, which, yeah, they ain't doing. You still have about 20,000 people in your jury pool. So the judge is going to have to decide, is that too small? Anyway, I kind of digressed and got ahead of ourselves for a minute.
That's larger than a lot of communities.
It is, and there's plenty of murder cases that have been tried in small communities from coast to coast, and the defendants have had a fair trial. So it absolutely can be done. Should we move on to page 6?
Sure.
Chris? Okay,
Yep.
let's go to page 6.
Okay.
So she continues on this theme that the media has put out inaccurate information. And she says, quote, "The media content is not benign. Rather, it's inflammatory." She keeps going back and using that word. "Emotion evoking and often misleading, false, and poorly sourced." Which I kind of chuckled at that because, yeah, she's trying to take a jab at reporters, journalists. Again, she doesn't cite any examples where these were poorly sourced. Yeah, thank you. So you guys can kind of see, if you can read the screen, you can kind of follow along on this. So Ann Taylor, she goes on to point out that the media coverage before the trial won't decline, but will continue. I'm not even sure where she got that crazy notion that it would ever decline. Yet she's created arguably lengthy delays in the case. She says she needs more time to prepare. We all know about that. So it now seems that she's blaming the media for covering the case pre-trial, and yet at the same time asking for more time, and she's been getting it. So that was kind of interesting.
And now with this latest situation with this Skylar Mead, I mean, that really could backfire onto Bryan, because now she has to split her time. To both of these cases are going to be very high profile.
It almost doesn't seem like that would be a smart move and even allowed, just my personal opinion. But let's hope that if she does try to get more time, because now she's picked up another case, that the prosecution would be all over her and not allow that to happen.
Yeah, let's hope.
So let's hope. We're going to have to wait and see on that. So further down on page 6, she talks about her paid survey with the paid results. And I know I've said that a couple times. I'm going to keep reiterating that. Again, if we're thinking that this person is objective, they're not. They're hired specifically by defense teams to come in to survey communities where these high-profile murder cases take place and present their findings to the defense, and the defense uses them in court to try to get the location of the trial moved. And
yes, CV, that's correct. She can.
That means she can raise her fees.
And of course, that makes sense too. Remember, if you followed our channel, I said over a year ago, this is a career case and it's a money move. And now that she's left the public defender's office potentially and gone out on her own, she's still going to get paid by the state because she's appointed now as co-counsel or conflict counsel, as they call it, to the PD's office. So yes, she can set her her fees. They may go up. We don't know. Well, it's possible, but the court may have already capped them. So we won't know the result of that just yet until we'll see what she's going to charge the state in the Skylar Mead case, because she'll be getting another $1 million, maybe $2 million there. So just think about it. Within the last 2.5, 3 years, she's become a multimillionaire.
And we're not saying that defendants don't deserve, in general, a vigorous defense. Of course they do. Of course, that's how our system works. That's not what we're saying. We're just pointing out to you guys, and you can see it on the screen there, that this Bryan Edelman of Trial Innovations, he has a PhD as a sociologist. He's the guy who did these surveys. Thank you, LS. Yeah, we totally agree.
She already has. This is a great point by Ronnie.
Yeah.
Skylar didn't put a, guilty or not guilty. The court put it in for her. He remained silent. He just stood there quiet. So the games have begun.
It's like the same playbook is being used on that case at the beginning, because it's, Chris, wouldn't you say it's very rare for a defendant to sit there silent and the judge has to put in his plea?
Yeah,
you don't see that all the time.
I mean, how many murderers that you've seen me work, Karen, and it's like, they get right up there and the judge looks at them, what do you want to say? Not guilty, Your Honor. Okay, thank you. Next. Let's move on, set some dates. Pre-trial hearings, that kind of stuff, arraignments, yada, yada.
All right, so jumping back to this change of venue motion. So Ann Taylor calls it her community attitude survey, and this PhD, Bryan Edelman, is the guy who conducted the survey. She claims, now this was interesting, she claims 70% of the people that they phoned and spoke with believe that the defendant is guilty. She also claims that the survey guy showed, quote, predisposition against him in Latah County. They also did phone surveys in neighboring counties, and they said a lower number of people in these other counties followed the case. Therefore, that's part of her argument of getting this thing moved to neighboring Ada County, which is Boise, a much larger population. Okay, yeah, you can read that. So any thoughts before we move on, Chris?
No. Where are we at? What page?
So let's go to page 8.
Okay.
Let's jump ahead to page 8. And this, I already brought this piece up, but she makes the point here that the jury pool is about 25,000 people. Many folks are connected to the university and law enforcement. And that's where she breaks out the potential jurors. And so the pool, it might be closer to 20,000 people. Okay. So this is one of the points that she's making, that she claims that Ada County has 12 times as many potential jurors, and therefore her client can get a more fair shake. Yes.
Wouldn't it be
Thank
ironic?
you, Idaho Charlie. Boise is Ada County. Okay.
Wouldn't it be ironic if Skylar Mead was moved to Latah County and BTK or Bryan Kohberger was moved to Ada County? Now that would be an interesting shift. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, we don't know that, but all right, let's jump to page 9. This really stuck out to me. Let's see if you guys, it's probably midway down the page. Yeah. So she says, jurors sitting on a trial in Latah County will have no anonymity. In a town where calls by a surveyor result in reports to the prosecution and police, there's no doubt that everyone will know who the seated jurors are, and if this trial's not moved. Okay, let's hard stop there for a second. So what's she doing? If you guys remember, back in the spring, her paid survey taker started to call people, and people didn't know. The people in Latah County didn't know, were they getting scammed? What was this? So they called the prosecutor's office, and I think they called Moscow Police Department, like, hey, someone's calling around, asking me about this case. And so she's calling those people out right here in her document. She's saying that because they narked on her survey taker, that she's blaming them because they reported her. And if you guys remember, sequence of events, so the prosecution was shocked, caught off guard that these surveys were even going on in the county. It goes before the judge. Judge John Judge says, time out, stop the surveys. Okay. 8 weeks later, he rules from the bench, oh, you can continue the surveys. Okay. So all that happened with from I think it was end of March, April, May, in that time frame. So what she's doing here is she's calling out the people who said, hey, we don't know what's going on with this. They didn't even hear about it. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And she's also, she's saying that the people who sit on the jury will have no anonymity. Really? That kind of sounds like a scare tactic to me. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, how does she know that? I mean, you remember part of the argument was in one of the hearings where she was saying, well, we want to find that, that person, that farmer out there that's never heard of anything. They haven't heard of a single thing. Well, okay, but now on the other side of the coin, you're saying, yeah, but that person may be known to everybody in the community because it's such a small community, and therefore there's going to be immense pressure on that person to give a guilty verdict of death. Remember, there are two trials within a trial here. The first one is whether or not he committed the 4 murders. And then the second one is, should he be given the death penalty? So which one of these two is she talking about? She talking about the initial verdict, or is she talking about giving him death as the punishment verdict?
She's talking about both.
Right.
She says it right there, to reach a guilty verdict and then death verdict. So what she's doing, it's a scare tactic. She's saying, well, it's such a small community, everyone's going to know. No, they're not. Their faces will not be shown on television. They're not going to know. They're supposed to not talk about the case, whoever is going to get picked. And it's like, wait a minute. On one hand, you don't have faith in the system. And, now you're trying to kind of skew this to make an argument to the judge that your client isn't getting a fair trial in this county.
Remember the doctor and the lawyer that went golfing, Karen? And they're out there on the putting green, and the doctor's phone rings, and he answers it. And he's like, yeah, okay, well, just take 4 of those and, make sure, you get the appointment and get in there, yada, yada. And he hangs up the phone, and he looks at the lawyer, and he says, hey, he says, doesn't it drive you crazy? Do you get a lot of these calls and stuff like that? And he goes, yeah. And the doctor says, well, maybe I should do something about it. And the lawyer said, yeah, maybe we can talk about it later on. Okay. 3 days later, the doctor got a bill. $460, classy laughs. Right there. Okay, let's keep moving.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. Okay.
Where are we at?
Along. Let's move along to page 11. Let's move along to page 11. And
my favorite.
Yes. Would you like to go over this one, Chris?
Scott Green's book included a chapter on the murders published last year before the trial. I said it was a stupid thing when Green did it, and I'm still saying it today, and at some point it would bite him in the butt. And guess what? Karen, back to you.
Yep. So the defense says the impact of the message from a community leader in a highly emotional atmosphere creates a level of strong potential for bias not existent in other places. In other words, when the leader of the university writes a book about this case, she's trying to make the argument that, well, the whole community is biased if he's writing, which is really a stupid argument.
She,
It's dumb. It
well,
doesn't it doesn't really make sense. What she should have said was, I mean, and I told Chris, I could make the argument that Scott Green's book, because it's available on Amazon, went out to the world, and all the counties in Idaho could be equally tainted by the same book as all the counties in America and all the counties overseas. All the, you know. So again, I think it's just kind of a sneaky way for her to put that in to remind the judge, hey, somebody's making a profit off of this case before the trial.
yeah, including herself. She was utilizing the gag order and the motions to get around the gag order by putting out the flow of information into the community, limiting, just holding back, because she can't say anything publicly, but she can sure write a motion. And I said that would be a defense tactic as well. And isn't it amazing that today she puts in here a good example specific to the population of Latah County, comes from the University of Idaho president Scott Green. He published a book with a chapter entitled "When Evil Visits Your Campus." He dedicated the book to the victims and claims the proceeds from the book are being used to create a memorial garden. In his book, President Green tells of the great fear that existed on campus and in Moscow. He writes about self-defense classes and counseling that goes on to this day. He expressed how the community came together, bringing several thousand residents to a candlelight vigil. He explains how his close work with law enforcement during the months after the crime helped him make decisions. He shares in writing his theory about Mr. Kohberger's guilt. You heard it, everybody, all of you, our family members over here. We said, not a good, not a close one there, Professor Green, because it just
He's
came
not
back.
a professor. I don't want to insult any professor out there. He's not a professor. Doesn't have a PhD.
Well, he's got a piled higher and deeper now, PhD, because this is making world news, which we said it would. And what's kind of cool is she's smart enough to use it against him.
I know, but her argument, if you follow it through, doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up, because his book wasn't just kept in Latah County. His book has gone everywhere. Okay, that's my point. Okay. Yes, he's a leader and he lives in Latah County. That's her point. But when you're talking about a book, it's feathers at the ocean. The feathers scatter everywhere. That book can go everywhere. It's not going to just stay in Latah County. So I think there's two sides to that argument. And I think she was looking for an opportunity to put that in the motion. Hey, the University of Idaho president wrote a book and talked about this case before the trial. And I think this is just the vehicle that she's doing it with. That's
a solid point, Karen. It really is. And I love your analogy of the feathers. I mean, you know how I like little stories about the young man that was, having problems bullying other kids, and his grandfather said, I have an assignment for you. And he gave him a bag. And the little boy looked at the bag and he said, what is this, Grandpa? And he says, do me a favor, look inside. And he opened it up and it's a bag of feathers. He said, now go to all of your friends' houses and put a feather on every one of their porches, the ones that you've offended today. And so the little boy does that, and he comes back about an hour later and he says, Grandpa, I did just what you asked me to do. He says, wonderful. Now, what have you learned? He says, well, I don't know. What have I learned? He says, now go and gather the feathers. And he says, but Grandpa, the wind has come in and taken them all away. And he says, you have learned the power of words. You have learned that once they leave you, they can never be gathered again. And this is why when people write books or when people say things and they just sit behind a computer screen and arbitrarily fire off ideas or stories, we have to be conscientious of our words. And Ann Taylor, I have to give her credit, Karen, has done a really good job of manipulating the motions in this trial. And we said that in the very, very beginning. And the other thing that she was really good at getting done is getting that house torn down, which is
I can't even go there with the house right now.
Mhm.
Let's just kind of set that aside.
Okay.
I totally agree with you. Obviously, she knows that when she puts a motion out, that's her voice getting out there about the defendant, and she knows darn well the prosecution cannot respond. It's a one-way conversation with the community, with potential jurors, with the public. And you're right. We called it from day one. We saw her doing it. And here we are. The longer that trial is pushed aside, pushed back, the more she can do this.
So Ann writes, what does she write, Karen, at the top of the page there? Impact of the message?
Yeah, she says the impact of the message from a community leader, meaning Scott Green, in a highly emotional atmosphere creates a level of strong potential for bias not existent in other places. That's what she's saying. Now, we have the book. We read what he wrote. He was fairly careful about adjudicating the case in his book. He talked about fear. He talked about what was going on with the campus. He talked a lot about how his non-law enforcement admin folks had daily updates with Moscow Police Department about the case, which is really highly unusual. Very highly unusual, not seen, especially for an ongoing, quadruple murder case. We can set that aside. But she's done a really good job of keeping the one-way language going on. But again, I still think this was her way of getting that book in this motion.
Yeah.
Okay, we're coming up to the part here in this document where I just think it's like silly. This is like some highly silly stuff going on here. Okay. Hang on. Before we get to that part, Chris, I have in my notes that logistics is not a reason for a change of venue. So Ann Taylor lists the reasons why she thinks the trial should be held in the larger Ada County, including, I'm not kidding you people, the size of the courtroom. She says that the size of the courtroom can accommodate, she's talking about Ada County, has adequate space for both prosecution and defense and overflow space for the public to watch the trial. Okay. Oh, now they want the public there. Okay. Wow, there's been so many gag orders and the hearings haven't even all been televised, but now she wants overflow space for the public to come in and sit and watch the trial. So that's one thing. Size of the courtroom. Okay, I'm pretty darn sure that cannot be considered. She's got it here in her motion. Second thing she mentions is a larger airport. Boise has a much larger airport for witnesses to fly in and testify at the trial. And I thought, size of the airport? Is this a quadruple murder? Or is this like some event she's planning? Okay, I was like mind blown on that. She literally mentions the larger airport and she says the local Moscow Pullman airport has much fewer direct flights for people to come in. Okay, so those are logistics.
You can't make that.
You can't make this up. Again, we are hoping common sense.
It's right here. Moscow Pullman Airport has few direct flights, especially in the summer months. What is she inviting?
Is she planning a wedding? What is
She,
going on here?
here, let me
What
put
is
it up here
going
for
on
the
here?
audience. Right there. And this is on page 12.
12. Yep.
Okay. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And then she goes into here. This will require most witnesses to travel to Spokane, Washington, and rent a car to drive to Latah County Courthouse. Well, here's one for you. What about the family members?
Exactly.
Do they have to, if you change a venue, what will they have to do, Your Honor? Judge, please, hopefully somebody will show this to you. What about their family? The real victims here, not the orange victim in the jumpsuit. Hey, the real victims. What do they have to, how many hoops do they have to jump through before it becomes, something that catches the court's attention? I mean, she even goes on to cite that Chief Fry, and does anybody know if he won the election, by the way? But she cites here, just in case, another consideration for the court is that Chief Fry running for Latah County Sheriff. He's a witness in this case. He is engaged in extensive media statements. If he's elected, his position statutorily gives him power to summon jurors if directed to do so, and to be in charge of impaneling the jury. The judge and the lawyers will impanel the jury.
Let me interject here real quick. So this is an if he wins. Okay, what if he doesn't win? Guess what? No issue. Here's the second thing. The longer this woman delays the trial, the longer other people can get in other office, and her witness list is could go wonky. Okay. This again is she's coming. Go wonky. I did. It's really, I mean, again, I'm thinking about the victim families here. How do you not read this and not get somewhat upset, somewhat emotional about this? Okay. It doesn't make any sense. Why would one witness who is running for a different office, why would that figure into anything about a change of venue motion? I'm sorry, she didn't make the case on that one. It's silly. I told you guys this section of this document is ridiculous and silly. And I'm hoping John Judge does the right thing here and says, no way. Nice try. Again, to me, that spaghetti analogy is just coming back in my mind. Like, how much can you throw against the wall and what is going to stick?
Absolutely. Okay. I think it's total wonkiness. Where are we going next? Oh, politics. She mentioned politics, which was the chief.
We just covered that. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We touched on it.
She includes the Moscow police and the U of I press release sent to the media in this case. And then she goes to list them all. And we talked about this too a long time ago. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Okay. So what struck me as on, this again, change of venue motion, she's throwing in the kitchen sink. What she has here for like 130, 140 pages of this document is a regurgitation of all the press releases that went out to the public, to the media, from Moscow Police Department and also from University of Idaho. Okay, here's what I think. So what? Okay, it doesn't prove anything. Of course, there's been enormous media coverage of this. Of course, there's been enormous public interest in this case. It seems strange to me as a reporter who's covered many, many of these in the past, why you're going to just take 135 pages and include all the press releases. But she does. Oh, thank you, ND. That's very kind.
Yes. And so and remember, we talked about it, TIR family, about if these press releases only deal with emotional impact on the community and not to the investigation, that it would backfire. Okay. And what they ended up doing in these press releases, and Ann Taylor and this other guy, this other PhD, piled higher and deeper, have pulled out the impact of all the emotional steps that the police were dealing with. And, having stood, I mean, did you do the Brandon Wilson stuff? Aaron, I can't remember.
I didn't.
Or did Dave? Dave did that, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And this was a little boy that was murdered in a bathroom, made international news. It was everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And we stayed with the facts. We did not talk about the emotional impact that it had on the community. And the reason for that is for stuff like this. Because once you start doing that, then you lose focus of the family and you lose focus of the victims. And you put all the focus on the community. And you see here, condolence to the community. Why in the world is there condolences to the community in these press releases? And I talked about this a long time ago. This was just a huge mistake, in my opinion, because what it did is it took the focus away from the victims. And now the defense is using that as emotion to Bryan Kohberger.
Explain that a little more. Explain that more to people, what you mean by that.
Well, what she's doing is she's turning that emotion into empathy for Bryan when the community had no empathy, okay, at the time, meaning the police and the focus of the investigation was all about, touchy-feely. And, the mayor here is a perfect example. He expresses condolences to the community under the press release of the police department. Okay. Well, what she's saying is because he did that, the community has no empathy towards Bryan Kohberger, and therefore he cannot get a fair trial. Okay. When this press release should have never, ever gone out, because then it led into other things like, okay, well, let's go ahead and start controlling the narrative in terms of rumors and all this other stuff. In a homicide, who cares what the rumors are? You are the case agent. You are the investigating agency. You have all the facts. You don't have to keep, putting out there, that we have, 4,000 leads and, 2,000 touchy-feelies. We got, Idaho State Police doing snowmobiles and, down the hills with the kids and, having snowball fights with all that stuff. Remember, all of that happened. I was so frustrated when I saw all of this stuff.
And, I can speak to being a public information officer as a civilian for a police department. When I saw these press releases, this is amateur hour. I could not believe it. You never in a million years do you ever put this kind of stuff out. You don't have to. And, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And there's a way that the police department can come across as empathetic and doing their job and to be able to give media updates for the public.
I mean, look at this. This is absolutely word salad. Okay. Moscow Police Department, we have 4 detectives, 24 patrol officers, 5 support staff. From the FBI, we have 22 investigators right now in Moscow, 20 assigned agents out of Treasure Valley, and the list goes on, 2 from the Behavior Analysis Unit. Who cares? Who cares? What does that have to do Okay, by telling the community, you've got all these resources on here, going here. This is like, hey, we're doing something. We're doing something. Well, no kidding. That's what you're supposed to do. That's your job. If LAPD or San Diego or my agents, if we were to put this stuff out, the community would laugh at us and go, "Are you serious? Oh, well, wait a minute. We have to update some information and give you clarification," because they engaged in a word salad game with the community and with social media. Okay. Well, actually, there wasn't a 911 call and yada yada, and they go through here, and here's the sad part. This is in her motion for Bryan Kohberger.
Yeah.
He's using this to defend Bryan Kohberger. I don't know. I got it right. I'm batting 1,000 on that one. I don't think when they were writing these press releases, and I do believe it was the university, the public relations team, I don't think it was the police department in totality, because this was such a big deal. The university stepped in. In fact, Scott Green has a chapter in his book about it.
You should go to the part of the press release where they literally have a topic called rumor control.
Yeah.
Okay. Why would officials be even giving credence to rumors? You don't. You ignore them. They don't affect your case at all. They don't affect the investigation at all. So what? People, of course, are going to talk. Rumors and speculation. I'm reading it. Rumors and speculation continue circulating about the ongoing investigation.
Right there.
Yeah.
Cautions the public not to rely on rumors. Well, then get up in front and say, right now, we have 4, deceased. Their names are boom, boom, boom. The type of weapon utilized was a knife. We are ongoing in this investigation. We are looking for a white Honda Elantra as a possible Cilantro, whatever it was, word salad, for a possible suspect vehicle. Instead, they're worried about YouTubers and Twitter and, hey, all this other stuff over here. And to your point, Karen, okay, look, this is good stuff. We're looking for surveillance videos, blah, blah, blah. Hey, but then at this time, they do not believe the following individuals were involved in the crime: the 2 roommates, the male at the grub truck, private party. Okay. You don't have to tell the public that. You don't have to tell the public that. Okay. Just go about and catch Bryan Kohberger, and then tell the public, all that other stuff that you guys were worried about. Yeah, it's irrelevant. This is your guy. Okay. But instead, they created this whole paper trail for the defense to utilize in this motion. And you know what? Kudos to them, because in my opinion, it was the 2 investigators, the former homicide guys from California, that said, well, let's just use it against them, because, we don't do that. Right. I mean, there's enough out there. And it just gets worse. It really does. Because, look at here, they're updating how many police they have involved in this. I mean, it's just amateur hour. No, and I support the PD, but tearing down the house, doing stuff like this, not removing those cars right away, letting them sit outside for days and days and days. Okay. No, you can't tell me how much you pat yourself on the back that the defense isn't going to have a field day with some of this stuff.
And I would also throw in there the way they've treated the victims' families, from what we have been told. Just the indignation, the overall treatment, all of it. I would throw that in there too.
Yeah, no, I concur, Karen. I concur 1,000%. This is about the victims. Okay, this has always been about the victims. It's not been about the Moscow PD, the FBI, or the Idaho State Police. Do your job. And the same thing with the shooting, in Maryland or in Pennsylvania. Do your job. You know, I may be old school, and Karen knows I still work. Every day I wake up and go to a job, and I work murder. I'm not going to tell you where because I don't want to have the trolls. Okay. But this is not about them. This is about the families. And this whole case got discombobulated, okay, because of stuff like this. And in my opinion, it's because the university got in the middle and they interfered in the investigation of one of the highest profile murders in the United States at the time. And these 4 victims got lost in the word salad. That's just my opinion. Page 154, hon, where do you want me to go?
Yep. Let's go down to page 154.
Here's the word
So,
salad.
all right. Well, while Chris is getting there, this is the part of the motion here where we learn more about, I call him the paid survey taker. Okay. Again, this is this Bryan Edelman, this PhD guy. And he did phone surveys. And by the way, I just have to add this in because you guys know I love to do research. I kind of can't help myself. So I did some research on Bryan Edelman, and you can see he, again, let's remember that the defense has built all her arguments for this motion of change of venue around the survey results. Okay. And so what's kind of interesting, and I want to kind of stay focused here on this, but so this guy, Bryan Edelman, if you Google him, go do your own search. Don't take it from me. You can go do this, find this yourself. He wrote a paper, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. It looked like for some kind of society for trial consultants. And in there, he talks about how online surveys are far better than phone surveys. I just kind of laughed a little bit. I'm like, oh, so this isn't even the most, I don't know, ideal or technical or the most ideal way to gather the truest picture of information, according to him. He authored the article. So, okay, so I leave that with you as an aside. And the whole theme and premise of like the next, I don't know, 200 pages is that, hey, all the people we called in Latah County knew way too much about this case. And the people that we spoke to in Ada County knew less about this case. Therefore, we can find a more impartial jury in Ada County. So that is basically the sum of it. And Enoch, there are the survey questions, I believe, are included in this document as well. So I'm going to just kind of do a high level overview here on this. And so, you know, this is background on the survey taker. I guess I could talk about his wins and losses. I was going to save that to the end, but maybe we should jump into that. Okay. So again, you guys, I love doing research. That's just my thing. And I took a look at the other murder cases where he was brought in by defense to do phone surveys to try to give some ammo, no pun intended, to the defense to put in a change of venue motion. Okay. So I looked at the 7 cases that came up on Google. I don't know if it's a limited search. You know, I was digging as much as I could. I got 7 cases. I think you guys will be really interested to hear the results.
And for the record, there may be more, but we found.
Yes, right. There could be a lot. There's probably a lot more. I'm just saying what Google gave me for an initial few hour search. This is what came up.
For everybody means go ogle, but go ahead.
Okay. So again, these were 7 times he was hired and paid to do phone surveys, again, to try to get the change of venue for the defendant. In 6 of the cases, a judge came back and said, no change of venue. No change of venue. And what were these cases? Let me just give you a brief synopsis. One was the murder of a toddler by the father, Judge said no change of venue. And by the way, these people were convicted. Okay. The second one was the very high profile Officer Van Dyke, who shot and killed a 17-year-old, a black 17-year-old. That was back in 2018. No change of venue. The Pittsburgh synagogue shooter case, no change of venue. The case against the two of the officers in the George Floyd case back in 2002, the judge denied the change of motion, again, based on this Bryan Edelman's research. The Aurora, Colorado theater mass shooting, that was back in 2012 when that happened. The shooter killed 12 people. He's serving multiple life sentences in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge denied the change of motion from his work in that. And he also did work on the Flint water crisis. And we know all those cases fell apart. No one has ever served a day in jail for that. Yes, the governor of Michigan at the time was convicted. All of that overturned, all of it dismissed. So that travesty, if you will, all that fell apart too. The one place where he did have a win was when he was called in for a federal, this looked like a federal financial fraud case. This is former Baltimore prosecutor Marilyn Mosby. She did the failed prosecution of police in the Freddie Gray death case. And he was successful. A judge said, okay, we'll move her trial from Baltimore to Greenbelt, Maryland, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C. And by the way, she was still convicted. Okay, so that's like a quick synopsis of how some of his recent work, how it's gone over in court. So, oh, you guys are so sweet. You're very kind on your comments. So I have to tell you, after seeing that, I was like, okay, maybe I have a little more faith in the system. Maybe John Judge will, allow common sense to prevail and will make the right decision here in the case. Okay, so all of that is this Bryan Edelman. Okay, we don't know exactly how much he was paid, but we will find that out at some point. But again, when you do a paid survey, I think that everybody, it does have a right to a fair trial. Of course, we believe that. So,
including the victims.
Including the, yes. Well, I think she's talking about a defendant.
Well,
a defendant has a right to a fair trial.
Absolutely.
Yes, we wholeheartedly believe that. What we are doing here is we are pointing out the points in this document, this legal document, this motion for change of venue, and we're telling you guys, what do you think? You make the decision. Okay?
That's right.
You guys decide. What do you think? Okay, so we've got many pages of Mr. Edelman's background and, essentially what he found on the surveys. Okay, and, we'd be here all night if we're going to go through every question and what he found. So we just really have to kind of sum it up.
So where do you want me to go? What page, hon?
So on page 154.
Okay.
Back to that. Right here at the bottom of 154, he says, it's my opinion that the residents in Latah County have been exposed to extensive, prejudicial pretrial publicity and social media surrounding the murders of Kaylee, he names the victims, Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. Says the coverage of Bryan Kohberger included the interviews with former friends and students and old posts from his social media accounts dating back to years. And then he kind of goes on to what some of the media coverage was. And you guys can see that for yourself. He also goes on to say, quote, the media also saturated the jury pool with potential trial evidence and details, some of which proved to be false or misleading that created a presumption of guilt. Now, I would argue some of the misinformation that came out early on, I think it's been corrected. I think something like the University of Idaho professor who was accused in a crazy talk about inflammatory, that was inflammatory, right? About her involvement in this case. Well, obviously that's been sorted out. And, that was, I would argue that was limited. CNN wasn't reporting it. Obviously sane people in the media would never report that. So I think some of this sorted itself out, but I also challenged them, show us where it was inaccurate information in the media. Cite me the article, show me the quote that's wrong, show me all this. Okay. So I don't think, in my opinion, reading this, that they can make the point, but they haven't provided any evidence or proof of this. So he talks about speculation on social media before Kohberger was even arrested. So we have, some of that. And then, of course, he talks about post arrest. And of course, all this is pretrial. So I also wrote down here that the defense is trying to make the point that due to fear surrounding the area after the killings, before the arrest, that the community was scared. Okay. And that's a fact. Yeah, of course there was that out there. So it really doesn't make the argument of pretrial that it was unfair for their client. I mean, there was fear before he was arrested. I want to go to the quote where she talks about this, and she includes a quote from one of the victim's sisters in her motion, which, I'm sorry, that was in very, very bad taste. Unnecessary and in very poor taste. Chris, are you able to find that?
Which page one? Is it 155?
I think it's further down, but let me go back to 155.
Well, and
Yeah,
here
I think it's further. Here we go. It's in the middle of 155. Yeah,
okay.
it's right there. You just had it. Yep,
Okay.
you're right there. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. She said,
Yeah.
and Taylor says, one of the victim's sisters encouraged students to go home rather than risk their lives. They're talking about immediately after the killings, before there was an arrest. There definitely was fear on the campus, and the university gave students a choice. You can either stay here or you can go home. They closed the campus for a while. You can finish up your stuff online. That's the context that this is being talked about. But wait a minute. Ann Taylor has to include this on page 155 of this motion? Let me read it again. She goes, one of the victim's sisters encouraged students to go home rather than risk their lives. Why does that have to be included in this? Okay. And she goes on, the quote is right here. It says, quote, to the students at the University of Idaho that are still staying around campus, leave. Your grades are severely less important than your lives. Okay. That was Kaylee's sister. And it's further on in the document. I was like, wait a minute, time out. Time out. You do not throw victims' families under the bus to try to get your client, making the point that your client is not getting fair and an impartial justice here, that the jury pool's tainted. What do you guys think? She's quoting Kaylee's sister in her motion to get the thing moved out of Latah County.
Yeah, it's messed up. But, the other thing here is, she's, as CB says, when she puts her arm around him and says, my client is innocent. Oh, okay. Prove it. But you see, the burden of proof is on the state. So she can say and do whatever she wants with a gag order in place. So what she's doing is influencing the jury by circumventing the gag order in a motion.
Exactly.
To move the change of venue. That's what she's doing. And simultaneously, she's saying, by having this PhD write this, story, she's citing the victim's sister of saying that she's turning, she was stirring the pot with fear. When in reality, it really wasn't her sister, because to go down here, it really was the police chief. Again, we get into this, why feelings should be left in the closet, and they shouldn't be out into the community, because Police Chief Fry tried to reasonably reassure the public that everyone was safe, and the University of Idaho drastically increased campus security. Okay. So it was more about, we have to keep projecting this. And when we got there, remember when I walked around the bar, Karen, outside, and I was filming? We can tell the audience now. Do you want to tell them what happened when that door opened?
So that would be the owner of the bar came out and was like starting to scream at me and Chris.
Yeah.
What's the name of that bar?
I don't know.
Somebody throw it in chat.
I'm not going to
You guys
mention
know what I'm talking. Okay.
The guy went
Can't
nuts.
remember He started screaming at Chris. He yelled, get out of here. But we were on the public sidewalk.
Yeah, he says, you don't live here. You don't know this community. And I was
Corner
like,
Club. There you go. Thank you, Maui.
yeah, it is the Corner Club. Yeah. And I was like, and what's your point? He said, well, you don't understand the feelings of this community. And I said to him again, I said, well, what's your point? He said, my understanding, the victims were here in your club down here. What's the deal here? Over. Okay. And, that told us a whole bunch about, man, this thing's going to catch fire, and it's just going to keep going. And she's using it in this motion right here. Ann Taylor is using that emotion against the citizens of Moscow. Just remember, every time you yelled at the news coming into your town, she's using it against you right here.
I also want to make a point. Chris, stay right there. No, don't move the page. Go back. You have to go back. Go back to where you just were.
Right here.
No. It was about the house coming down.
Oh.
Yeah. Hang on. You didn't go too far. This just jumped out at me. Something else had just jumped. Yeah, go up. Keep going real slow. A little bit more. And stop. Look at this last sentence of the page. The King Road home where the victims lived was demolished based on requests from the student body. Okay, time out. Okay. Really? Was it requests from the student body? Or was it some kind of a backdoor deal with Scott Green and the owner to deed it over to him so the university could make it go away?
Good catch.
I find that fascinating. Requests from the student body. Well, guess what? They're students. A student is going to spend 4 years or whatever at a university and move on with their life. There's no way. I mean, she can say that this happened. She says, quote, we heard from students in the area that they were ready for the house to come down. Okay, Chris. Yeah, it's beyond ludicrous, whoever said that. Yeah, Chris, in all the murders you've worked, okay, have you ever heard a bold lie? You guys, we have to call this out. This is a lie. It is a non-truthful statement that the student body wanted the house to come down. And you know what? They may have, but who made the final decision? Oh, that'd be the owner. Oh, that would be the University of Idaho.
That right there that I'm reading, and I missed it, and you caught it. Great job.
But look at the last sentence. She says,
believe what I'm reading here.
She says, however, the decision was met with criticism and fomented another round of speculation and misinformation. Really? I would debate that with her any day of the week. Let's have an open debate. The decision was met with criticism and fomented another round of speculation. What speculation? people who've worked murder, like Chris, have said if you tear down the crime scene, there could be problems in trial, which is a common, like, hello, common sense. Okay. Fomented another round of speculation, and therefore her client is getting an unfair trial. That is what she's saying. What do you guys think?
You know, this is,
Crazy.
I'm
This
reading,
document is
I've read
cuckoo,
this document a couple of times. I missed that.
in my opinion.
Wait, so what she's saying is the victims, the King Road home where the victims lived was demolished based on requests from the student body. So what she's saying, she has information that students got hold of either the university or the police and said, we want that house taken down. That's what she's saying here. I want to see this evidence in court because we heard from students in the area that they were ready for the house to come down. They were ready for the house to come down. Wow. And however, the decision was met with criticism and fermented another round of speculation and misinformation. Wow. Wow. What do you guys think? I mean, I've never, mind you, not every jury wants to go to the crime scene. That is a given. Not every jury wants to go to a crime scene. But when they do, then you hope with the last place these 4 victims were taking their last breaths is still around. I'm telling you, that is going to be one of the biggest days in the trial when they introduce the processing of the crime scene. Mark my words on it, everybody on TIR, our family here, that will be one of the biggest days in the trial. Because all of a sudden, people are going to come to the aha moment and they're going to realize it's gone. It's gone. So, Your Honor, yeah, the reason it's gone is because, we heard from the students and they said they wanted it torn down. Okay. Did anybody hear from them? Did anybody hear from them?
Their parents spoke up, at least 3 of them. At least
No, I
3 of
know.
the victims' parents spoke up, were very public about their choice, what they wanted, and it was ignored.
That I'm telling you, well, I've beaten a dead horse. You know how I felt about this from day one, Karen.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So in this paragraph of her document, she's blaming the students. The students wanted it torn down, right? It's a blame everybody else. Blame the media, blame the police, blame the victims' families, blame the students. Okay?
Now, Tim, I respectfully disagree with you. And the only reason is DNA is great. Yes. Okay. And I appreciate your opinion. However, working over 500 death cases, 300 of them murders, that house is very significant.
And let me interrupt. It's so significant that the defense put it in her change of venue motion.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah, it pops up again in the change of venue motion. Isn't that interesting? It pops up. Well, what
why
about
would it not be significant? Of course it's significant.
Well,
Now, you can have a different opinion than us. That's fine.
yeah, that's
But
fine.
we're saying that Chris is saying, get ready, because when the trial happens, this will be a key aspect that will be fought about.
Well, and if they do change venue, it gets worse. Do you know why? Because the people in Ada County have never seen it. Never. Zero. And guess what? It takes one to say, hey, can we do a field trip and go up there? We'd like to see where this took place. And the court says, okay, let's get the sheriffs and the marshals, get everybody. We have to protect this jury, put them on a bus. We're going to drive them all the way up there to see the dirt lot.
A flat dirt lot that
A flat dirt
has no
lot.
sign of that the oddly configured home with the straight view in the back that is the fishbowl that you can see all the different levels. You can see what people are doing in the house. Long gone.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's Susanna, and thank you. The local bar reaction, I think that's kind of cool, because that's the kind of guy you want to get on the stand or get in the box and voir dire him and flush it out. You want those hard questions. You want those people who are emotionally attached out of the jury pool. And you want the other 25,000 that aren't emotionally attached in Latah County in the box. And you only need 12 plus maybe 3 alternatives. I don't know. I don't know how many they're going to pick, but a total of 15. So yeah, that could be a two-edged sword for sure. That could be a two-edged sword. You know, and you know, we'll see what happens, but I will submit to you that if it does go to a new county, they're going to want it back in Latah that day, because all of those people that have never seen anything, didn't see the house, didn't see none of that. They're gonna want to go see it. They're gonna want to see the hill that he came down. They're not going to want to watch just the video or the faro or the 3D scan.
Well, here's another point. Here's another point. If you live in Ada County, if you've never been to King Road, it's very hard to get a real flavor of how the road is configured, where cars ingress and egress. If you live in Latah County, you may have already driven by this place out of curiosity. And even if you haven't, okay, so it's closer. You could get a feel for the neighborhood and how kind of secluded this house was on this particular road. So, I think you could make an argument either way on this. I think it goes back to the fact that she includes it in her change of venue motion. Again, as one of the spaghetti strands, it's going to be thrown up on the wall to see what sticks. And, the judge will end up deciding.
Few, Dennis, few.
Very few.
In fact, realtors have to disclose whether or not somebody died in a house.
Depending on state law, it varies from state to state. A lot of states do make them disclose that.
And so the house was a crime scene, and that crime scene can get worked and processed, et cetera. But at the same time, it doesn't mean you're going to get everything. And let me give you a simple example. See those 3 cars out front there? Okay. Those are the victims. Those cars belong to that house. Right. And this picture was taken on Thanksgiving Day. If I was a smart defense attorney, the first thing I would ask the case agent when he got up there is, can you tell me whose Range Rover that is right there? Oh, that's so-and-so such and such is. Can you tell me why it's parked there? This was, what day did you guys tow it? And this is just a simple homicide. And the California Penal Code is 187. Okay. You have not lived until you have been grilled on the stand. And I've spent as long as 5 days on the stand continuously. We like to call Detective McDonough back. And I got, we had, as you guys, Karen knows, we had 3 juries, 45 jurors with 6 defense attorneys, and every one of them got a shot at me. I can guarantee you, the day I got there, the first thing I would have said is, who belongs to these cars? Well, those are the victims, sir. Okay, let's get the tow up here, get them photographed, get them furrowed, get them measured, get the spot where they're sitting here, get them out of here. Okay. Work the case from the street forward. From the street forward. From the side road in. From the back parking lot in. From the chain link fence over. And then you get to the door. And you work into the house. But those cars are out of here. Day one. The trash can that sat out there, or day two, the trash can that sat out there, even when we got there on Thanksgiving Day, out of here. Take it back, put it in a secure location, check the contents after you photograph everything, and dust the can. Make sure it's all cleaned up, nice and tight. And then you assign a second evidence team to process the vehicles while you are working the house with the evidence team. In my opinion, they should have called the FBI. They called Idaho State Police. They should have worked both. They did it in Daybell, where the kids were cut up in the backyard. They should have done the same thing here. They missed an opportunity. And that's how you work. That's how I would have had this crime scene worked. And the fact that I took this picture on Thanksgiving Day and those cars are still sitting there, that's a red flag. And the fact that now she's coming back and saying, well, yeah, the students want the house knocked down too. Okay. That's another red flag. That tells me that 2 years of the experience of that police officer that was involved in this, the FBI was involved. Yeah, I know. But all they were was a support mechanism. They didn't do the evidence collection. They came back. Remember, they came back just before they were going to tear the house down. Remember, they guaranteed that the house was processed correctly? Okay, then why in the world did the FBI come back? Here they are.
So your argument is, if they did it right the first time, why would they have to come back
Right.
almost a year later before the house is torn down?
And you see that little device right there? That's called a furrow. It's a 3D measurement tool. And that's an FBI agent. Okay? Because right here it says, FBI returns to King Road House for further investigation. Well, I thought it was buttoned up and it was tight. Now they got a phone call from the FBI and said, hey, did you guys do A, B, C, and D? Oh, dang it. Okay, well, we'll be back with our equipment. And there she is standing right there. Ann Taylor is get the popcorn out that day. Get the popcorn out. And guess who was there the same day? Look at this. The facilities group from the university.
They would have nothing to do with evidence collection. They're not law enforcement. They're not trained for that. It was an odd sight to see, wouldn't you say?
I thought this was just bizarro. The fact that the university took possession and control of anybody who came in and came out of that house, and they had to be there when the FBI was there. And that's why I wrote up there, who controls the scene? Is it the FBI or is it the university? Well, and then you see stuff like this in this this document, and you go, huh, she's got something writing in here somewhere. There's something else going on here. So there's words for it, but I'm a Christian man. My wife's in front of me, so I'll never use them.
Well, let's jump to page 168.
Okay.
Page 168 and 169 of, again, the motion.
What do you got?
So, okay, I want to make sure everyone's still following along with where we're at. So these are smaller points, but this one jumped out at me. I'm really curious what you guys think about this one. Page 168, right in the middle, says the department also addressed a rumor. Now, this is back, I believe, before Kohberger's arrest, that the homicides are somehow connected to an incident that occurred last month, so that's October 2022, in which a couple of dogs were found skinned in Moscow. Okay, that stopped me in my tracks. Here's what I remember. I remember one dog named Buddy, break my heart, 3 miles away from the university on a large piece of property that an elderly couple had. And the story was they woke up one morning in October and their dog had been skinned. Okay. And that was a Latah County Sheriff's Department case. Okay. And we as reporters and journalists were trying to get a copy of that case. And I remember back one of the UK newspapers got a hold of the couple and they made some statements, and then there was a clampdown on all media on covering that. Sheriff's Department said, oh, we can't release it. Talk to Moscow PD. It's part of their homicide case. And we were like, what? Huh. But I heard one dog. I didn't hear multiple dogs. Ann Taylor, in her writing, clearly says a couple of dogs were found skinned in Moscow. What do you guys think about that? Chris, what do you think about that? Do you think that's accurate? Do you think it's accurate? So there's more than one.
Remember when we got out there and we found out that there was a dog that was skinned like that? And, the distance was a little bit out because it was kind of in the country, but there was another program that did interview the family, the mom and dad, or it was an elderly couple, about the dog. And then Dr. Bercato, Dr. Burgess, Greg, myself, we all thought from an investigative analysis aspect, and of course from a forensic aspect with the docs, that was a huge problem in that neighborhood, or at least even in the vicinity, that you have animals out there that are being, and by the way, that dog was surgically skinned based on the information that was presented, and the fact that we went after the reports and they denied them to us. We thought within ourselves, man, there's going to be something more here on this dog. And the other red flag was, remember the car, the break-in behind the house, or to the side of where the victims were, there was a young lady who had her suitcases removed.
That was 6 months earlier. That was in March of 2022. So that would have been 7 months, before the murders. Yes.
But it's coming out now that we don't really know where he was because he was online for some of his classes. And so I don't think anybody has been able to eliminate him as, a possible problem with that particular circumstance as well. But he is a person of interest in a situation like that, and he would be a person of interest in the dog situation. If the timelines lined up and, Dr. Gary and I have talked about, and here he is right here. There you go. We said before, BK was arrested. The offender may have killed an animal, but probably not a person. And so there's Dr. Gary right there weighing in. And that's what I love about him. But the young lady, the girl in the car where her underwear was removed out of her suitcase and put into her door. And then you hear about a story of one of BK's friends who had some things really suspicious in her apartment. And BK steps up and says, "Oh, well, I can help you there." And he installs a surveillance system. Okay. And then it was kind of like, when I was talking to Dr. Picotto, he's like, well, that would be consistent with, he's trying to put the fear in somebody so that he can come in and be the helper. Okay. And that helper in of himself will also give him into intrusion. Now, I think here's something that I think folks were not paying attention to. There are 3 major pieces of evidence, maybe 4 or 5, that were recovered at his apartment. Remember, the defense investigators went to his apartment, and I'm going to ask our audience here in the chat, what did they remove at his request? You guys remember? Go ahead and hit me up in the chat over here so I can see.
Now be specific so they know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, so when Ann was first assigned, there it is. Teresa's got it. It was a smart TV.
Yeah.
Okay. Why would the defense, after talking to their client, go and remove a smart TV from his apartment? I'm telling you, I am not, I can't wait. I'm getting some popcorn that day on that smart TV. Thank you, California Dreaming. You're right. And then the other thing that they pulled out of there was 2 areas of what appeared to be blood, one on the pillow and one on the bedspread, and also some dog hair. They found some dog hair. Now, we don't know right now, right? None of us know. None of us know what's gonna kind of unfold on those things. But everybody is saying, well, they didn't find any blood. They didn't in the car and all this. Okay, yeah, okay, fine. We'll find out for sure if they didn't find any blood. That's just what the defense is saying. Okay, but the defense is also saying, that the sister shouldn't have said something. So, let's give the defendant, a fair trial. And if he did have blood, then we're going to have to explain it. Okay? And if he didn't have blood, we're going to have to explain that too, right? The prosecution's going to have to explain that. Okay. And, the fact that these may be out there. Okay. I love this sentence. I love this sentence right here. The fact that it may be out there. Online reports created immediate speculation that implied there was a link to this incident with the ongoing, homicide. And look at this. Investigators have looked into the claims that, Kaylee's family may have had a stalker, but have not been able to find evidence corroborating those statements. I disagree with that. And you'll find out why when the trial comes. But if you listen to Steve and his sweet wife very carefully, and you listen early on what they said in the very beginning, I think we're all going to be in for a big surprise.
Well, And speaking of that, if you go to the next page, on middle of page 169, leave it to the defense that she's trying to blame the victim's father for his statements to the public. It's on page 169, and you can see it starts as the investigation continues. You want to read that, Chris, and then tell us what you think?
As the investigation continues to go unresolved, the father of one of the victims spoke to national media about his frustration with the investigation. Steve told Fox News that the public should be looking for a sadistic male. He was correct, because the information he received from Latah County Coroner Kathy Mabbutt, somebody was mad that day, indicates the killer is a strong individual. Hey. Wow.
So why would she include that? Why would she? Is this another point that she says that was put out to the environment and therefore it's unfair to her client?
Wow. Yeah.
She goes on to give bullet points about other things that he said publicly.
Go ahead, read
The victim's allowed to do that.
Yeah. How many victims have you interviewed in your time and put their statements into the newspaper?
Hundreds.
And did you ever have a defense attorney call you out like this?
Never. I've never seen it. Never seen it. I just think it's in such poor taste. Listen, these are the victims' families. Leave them alone. Make your arguments, and the crux of your arguments and your evidence have nothing to do with the victims' families. It's about your phone survey. Okay? So why are they included? It seems unnecessary. It's just terrible. It's in horrible taste. And it really shows that anything goes for a defendant. Well, that's not the essence of how our system works. I'm sorry, you don't get to tear down the victim families in order to build up your defendant. Am I missing something, Chris?
No. No. And we've said this from
the family is all over this document that she put together.
Yeah, and I think Callie Dime here, she says, Anne will do what she has to win.
Yeah, agreed, Callie, for sure.
You know what a defense attorney's job is? It is to represent the client, no question, with the truth. That is a defense attorney's job. Tell the truth. Because the truth will set you free. It is not to blame the family for your client sitting in jail just because of something they said. This is all smoke and mirrors. And I hope the judge sees this, and I hope the judge blows past this, because, as the survey said, this whole thing comes down to blaming the media and the family. That's what the whole thing comes down to. It doesn't come down to, okay, there's no way my guy did this. Because if she had my guy didn't do this, okay, then she wouldn't have to do stuff like this. It's ridiculous. Okay? It just, and now she's going to be really busy again with Skylar Meade.
Well, let's make another point here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's talk about this artificial gag order that was placed on the family's attorney, right?
Yep.
Okay. And prosecution and defense, well, she gets to write all the motions. Let's look at the time frame. Okay. The arrest happened December 31st, 2022. At the very earliest, June of 2025 is when the trial is supposed to take place. That's what, 2.5 years? Are we supposed to assume that the families who are grieving these children that they lost aren't going to talk to the media, that they're not allowed to express their First Amendment right to talk about this. I mean, come on. Again, common sense, folks, common sense here. The families have every right to speak about this before the trial and during and after the trial. So to
Yeah.
put them in this motion and blame them as one of the talking points of all the reasons that their defendant's not, unable to get a fair trial in Lake County is just pathetic.
Yeah, it never made sense to me that the family wasn't allowed to talk to the media or to anybody, that there was a gag order. I mean, what in my experience has shown me, you just sit down with the family and you say to them, look, here's where we're at. I can't tell you everything. You understand, I know you do. Okay? However, I need to ask you a favor. What's that? The more we talk into the public, the worse it becomes for the investigation. I would ask you if you could please work with me. And I promise you, I will work with you and we will find justice for your family. And if I run into a roadblock or I clog the wheel in any way, shape, or form, let me know. Just tell me. I'll try to correct the course, or at least I'll give you an understanding of why there is a course correction. Every family I've ever talked to along those lines, in some way, shape, or form, okay, has said, okay, find justice for my child. Okay. And if a family in the very beginning is expressing to the public, look, there's this, I'm seeing this, I'm talking to my friends who have experience in this, and they're seeing this. If they went to the agency and the agency said, you know what, we're not interested in what you have to hear, or what you have to say. And that in of itself creates this adversarial relationship. I don't know if you guys remember in Maya Miliete's case where Richard, right? They were having a problem with the police department and they reached out to us and the Cold Case Foundation, and I was able to bridge that relationship with the agency. And when they got him in custody, which he's going to court, the first thing the chief said down there, it was Chula Vista Police Department, said, we want to thank the Cold Case Foundation and their involvement in this. And behind the scenes, there was a lot of, can we just work with the family and then explain to them what you're doing procedurally without compromising the investigation. And lo and behold, Larry Miliete was arrested. And now he's going to trial for the murder, of Maya. And that's not rocket science. And when we forget, when law enforcement forgets the two words on the side of their car that says protect and serve, well, that's what they're supposed to do. And that also means the family. And so when the judge gets the defendant in front of them, the judge has to remember that he represents a middle-of-the-road balance, the Lady Scales of Justice, and then on one side, these 4 college students and parents, aunts, uncles, Everybody. And then on the other side, your defendant, aunts, parents, uncles over there, okay? But it shouldn't be this. It should always be this. Always. That's why Lady Justice carries scales and why she wears a blindfold. Because she doesn't see. She does not see. And that is the officers of the court, including the defense. They are sworn to tell the truth on behalf of their client. And if they think they have it, well, then defend it and do it. But don't use the family as, some other dude, to say that the father went out there and said, hey, I got problems, or to say, this or that. You ever notice when you don't have a strong case as a defense, immediately the cops go on trial, immediately the family goes on trial, immediately the evidence goes on trial, immediately the house goes on trial, immediately the community goes on trial, the media goes on trial. Well, guess who's not on trial yet? Is the defendant. Okay. Let the court of public opinion roll on YouTube and social media. Let people do whatever they're going to say or do. Gives them something to do, actually. Okay. Because when the evidence really does come out, whatever that is, and we don't know what that is just yet, it'll be, beyond reasonable doubt or not. And he gets to high five and walk out of the courtroom. Okay. But don't put the family on trial. I refuse to do that. I will not do that on this channel. That's just how I roll. Okay. Now, I will call out the problems if I see them. You guys know me. But, not all the time. Where do you want to go, Karen? We're almost at 2 hours into this.
Yeah, let's go to page 183. Can you guys hear me okay, by the way?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. My earbuds stopped working.
I'm sorry. I thought you were talking to me. I apologize.
Well, you too, honey. If you guys can hear me, we're wrapping this up. There's a couple other points I just wanted to make with this to let you guys know. So on page 183, the defense continues to blame the media. I'm going to let you get to that page and then we'll read it.
Okay, I'm here.
It says the media has also kept this case in the public's consciousness by providing constant updates on court proceedings, no matter how trivial. These hearings have covered a range of topics from the court-imposed gag order to evidentiary disputes. As part of the coverage, the victims' families and the public have been critical of perceived efforts by the defense to delay the trial. You can throw us in there too, okay? There was also significant coverage surrounding the defense's change of venue survey, which came to light after the government filed an unsealed motion to stop the data collection process. This resulted in another deluge of prejudicial coverage and discussion on social media and YouTube after 2 hearings were streamed on court TV and watched by thousands. Okay? To that, I would say, so what? Media is doing their job. This is exactly what media should be doing. Okay? I'm going to continue on. The media drew on prosecution's court filing and arguments during the live streaming procedures, accusing the defense of spreading misinformation and tainting the jury pool. Okay, that's what the prosecution, if that was their stance, then that is their stance. They have to argue that in court and convince the judge. This coverage fed the public perception that the defense was trying to undermine the judicial process or get her client off on a legal technicality and further undermine the court's effort to stem the flow of information to prospective jurors. She has picked apart the entire synopsis of the last, 2 years here
2.5 years. And she's trying to use it to make what I think are weak arguments to the judge about, again, how unfair this whole system is to her client. So there isn't any aspect of this case that she hasn't put on paper and is trying to turn it and spin it for her benefit. And guess what? That's a healthy, robust defense. So for all you folks out there who think that we're being too one-sided, we congratulate her. She's got the kitchen sink in this motion, in these 314 pages. I don't think there's anything she's left out. But again, a judge with common sense is going to see right through this. I want to just touch on also page 184, where she even throws John Judge under the bus, in my opinion, in her effort to get a change of venue. Well, how does she do that? So she's citing the back and forth in open court that we saw, where the judge expressed his frustration about the survey because he didn't know about it until complaints were made. And he tells her this is a big deal. So she's scolded publicly by the judge over this. And again, she puts that in here and includes it as evidence. Thank you, Mimi. You're very sweet. As evidence, again, that her client is getting an unfair shake in Latah County. And she tries to use even the judge's statement to her advantage. It's the paragraph that says, judge expressed disappointment in the survey. Let's show everybody that. I think is it up top? Oh, yeah. The judge expressed disappointment in the survey by saying the prosecution and defense have, quote, worked so hard to protect a fair trial, which was the point of the non-dissemination order. That's the gag order. He is concerned that the survey will inject prejudicial information into the jury pool. That's what the judge decided. Now, look how he ruled. He eventually said, okay, defense, you can go ahead and finish the surveys. Okay? So Chris always talks about balancing those scales of justice. Okay. He didn't like it, but he allowed the defense to continue. I think if we, I want to jump to page 199 and then we can kind of talk about some other points.
Okay.
But this one for me was like kind of the cherry on the cake in terms of, wow. So on page 199, one of the questions that the paid survey guy asked the folks in Latah County, I think it's page 199. Yeah, here we go. One of the questions they asked was, what if, hypothetically, the defendant was acquitted? What effect would that have on the community? Now, wait, time out, okay? They presented the survey as, quote, what have you known, seen, or read? Remember, we heard all about the survey questions. What do you know, seen, or read? Okay, so the fact that like the last question here is, what kind of an outcome do you think will happen if this guy's acquitted? Okay, purposely it draws out immense emotion in people who are asked the question. So of course they're going to respond. And some people said crazy things. Some people said, oh, this could lead to riots. Some people said there'd be uproar in the community. Okay, so they're asked the question, and then she puts in here, see, you guys, I told you my client can't get a fair shake in this county. And she sees it as undue pressure by the jury to convict. Instead of saying, okay, well, people are going to my jury is supposed to judge based on the evidence presented to them. I know. Can you believe that, Babs? Question on the survey is hypothetically. No wonder the judge didn't want the survey to go on, and they act like, oh, well, these are harmless questions or whatever. You ask a certain question, you draw out a certain answer.
Yeah,
and they know full well what they're trying to do.
others reported that Bryan Kohberger would be killed if he was acquitted.
Even if it was true,
Have
why
you
would you put that in a
ever
survey?
known an acquitted defendant murdered after they were acquitted? I mean, look at the heat in
can't think of one.
Boston right now with the Karen Reed case, where it's a hung jury, and she's out walking around. You know, she killed. You know, according to the state's case, they accused her of taking out a cop. And so who's supposed to be? So there would be another killer going after Bryan if he was acquitted. Is basically what they're trying to say here, right? And you can frame a question any way you want. Okay. And I just think the fact that they use this inflammatory language like this.
Well, Chris, here's a what if. Okay. Hypothetically, what if this is moved out of, scroll back down. Yeah. What if it was moved? It's okay. We don't have to have it on screen. What if it was moved to a different county? And what if he was acquitted? It wouldn't matter what county you had the trial if that's the outcome. So that could be argued either way.
You know, and look at this. They burned the courthouse down. Outrage would be a mild description. Very upset. They would think the jury failed. I think we would all be heartbroken all over again. So that's, again, feelings. And feelings. Fear is the opposite of faith. Would probably rise in us again. See, it's about us, the community. It's not about the victims. See, this is a paradigm shift here. I don't think we would be okay with a not guilty verdict at all. Who cares what you think in the community? You know, seriously. And this was fed by those press releases. It's like, you know, what do we always used to say? Feed the beast. Okay, i.e. the media. Feed the beast, or they will eat you. Okay? It would be very hard for our community to accept. And it would be, well, it wouldn't be that hard because you guys accepted knocking the house down. And you're on your lives now. You know, you're out and about doing your own thing. Okay. And it would be difficult for us to move forward and feel safe in our own community like we once did before this horrible tragedy. Well, there's a lot there now. Is it just a dirt lot? Okay. Oh my gosh, I would be so afraid. Possible riots. Yeah, headlines. Riots in Moscow, Idaho. Bryan Kohberger walks. Who's rioting? What are they doing? Throwing zucchini at each other? You know, cow dung? Let's see here. We would be disgusted unless some major evidence proves different. The entire county mostly believes he's guilty. Is this what this guy has a PhD?
So this was all done to elicit strong emotions. She's trying to prove her point here, right? And we're calling it out, saying this was manufactured. If you're asking an extremely leading question that may never happen, just to elicit emotion, and then point to that emotion and say, "See, we told you he can't get a fair trial here." It's self-serving. It's bogus. And, you know, we hope the judge is going to see right through it.
Yeah, you know what? There are so many people in that community right now that doesn't think he did it. Just look at some of the YouTube channels. I mean, they didn't talk to them. They didn't put all that in there. I mean, there are people in the chat right now that are saying there's no way he's innocent. He's not the guy. Okay, great. Well, we don't know that. Nobody knows that. But, you know, obviously, you know, some of these people, the granny person in here, let me find her. Whoever this is, you know, he's innocent. Well, you weren't obviously asked in the survey. They missed you. Somebody needs to get Granny into the survey over here. Okay.
She probably doesn't live in Lake Tahoe County.
Probably, but it doesn't matter. But the point being, there are people like Granny and others, many others, hundreds, maybe thousands, tens of thousands, okay, that do not believe he didn't do this, that it was a Green Beret, or there were tunnels under the house that, went under the university, and, the suspect snuck up into the house, and, or it was the cartels, because one of the kids' mom had a narcotics problem, and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Well, here's what we used to say in homicide. We don't get to choose our victims. I can't tell you how many prostitutes I've stood over, transgenders, you name it, I've stood over them, and they're dead. They've left this world and gone on to another place. Apparently, this guy doing this survey didn't think it was important enough to go to ask the people on YouTube what's going on here. Okay, because I think they may have gotten, you know what I mean? A different survey here, crazy conspiracy theories. Exactly. I mean, the tunnel theory, that was a good one. I love that one. The tunnel theory. Remember that one that was up there early on in this thing? Everything. Yep. And yeah, Cemetery Larry, exactly. They're still human beings. And they got murdered. I had one, if you go look in the, look me up, I had a caper where a transgender was on the phone, and this guy pulls up and boom, capped him with a .44 Magnum. Right here, big hole. Dropped. I caught the murderers. I didn't get to choose my victim. I didn't care. I cared about the victim. I still do. I still care about the victims' families. And the defense had a field day, with the suspects. Wrong place, wrong time, not our guy. You must have done it, detective, just like everybody else. But we haven't lost sight of these four, excuse me. We haven't lost sight of them, and I'm not going to, because they deserve justice when stuff like this is floating out there as smoke and mirrors. And I hope the judge sees through this. This isn't balancing the scales by moving this case. It's not balancing the scales, because they're going to run into a much more conservative area in Boise. A lot of people don't know this, but did you know that within the law enforcement community, the Boise area, that whole Ada County area, etc., they call that the blue dot. Right, Karen?
They sure do.
There are more retired cops from California and all around the United States there in Coeur d'Alene than you can imagine. And I think they're going to be booting. They're going to be booting jurors left and right. So, what did you do for a living? Well, I'm retired out of LAPD homicide. Okay, we'd like to excuse juror 5. Next, et cetera, et cetera. So, be careful what you're begging for. Be careful, Ann. You don't know. You should go out. You should go over there and do the demographics. Figure it out. Look them up. Look at this.
Well, the whole reason that it would not be a good idea to move this is the two main reasons is, number one, it could buy, again, the defense more time and delay this trial even further. And number two, the families may not be able to be there. It's even further away for the families. And to me, those have to be overriding considerations for this whole thing. And, one of the reasons of breaking this down and presenting this to you guys is for when the hearing on this, it's scheduled for August 29th. Like so many things with this case, doesn't actually happen that day, but it's scheduled for just a couple of weeks away. We wanted you guys to be informed of what's in the document that the judge is going to make a ruling on. And again, we keep saying we hope that he can see through this. We hope he has enough experience on the bench where he knows that there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, as Chris says, on this. And we hope that common sense prevails.
Yep, definitely. Okay, sweetheart, you have the anything else? You have the last word for this evening. And great analysis. I'm very proud of you.
I would just end with how we began. Again, the trial is it's something that the families we know have been waiting such a long time for and still have a long wait to go. And we always want to remember Ethan, Maddie, Xana, and Kaylee. And our prayers go out to their families. We pray that the right thing is done in the courtroom that does serve justice for the victims. And the defendant is going to have a fair trial. He is. It's going to be that way. But as far as this point in the procedure and process, we hope that common sense prevails and that the judge does the right thing and does not grant the change of venue motion.
Yeah. Well said. And I think if the judge just looks at this picture right here, I guarantee you that emotion and justice and mercy, all three of them can work together for good. And that we remember there's a family out there, 4 of them, 5 of them, including Bryan's, who are suffering right now. Because after this is all over, either way it goes, all of these families are looking for something, and that's called the truth. And they're hoping that the system will work in their behalf. Have a good night, everybody. Aloha. Karen and I love you guys, and we're grateful that each and every one of you sit with us on a Sunday night. Have a great evening.
Good night, everybody.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away. You and me go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away. Yeah, we're going away. You and me. Feeling the sun on my face in a while.